Hello and welcome back to the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, the podcast all about enterprise resource planning software and how it helps with running a business through a dedicated system. So if you're new to the world of ERP and are looking to learn about how it can provide reliable inventory control, accurate bookkeeping, real-time data analytics, amongst other features, then that's where this podcast comes in. And in today's episode, it's a part one of a three-part series around manufacturing within an ERP. From the shop floor to the top floor, we'll dive into how ERPs are not just about the technology, but about bringing people, processes, and data together to create a cohesive and efficient manufacturing environment. In the first episode, we are laying down the groundwork by introducing the concept of ERP in manufacturing and why it should be a cornerstone of operational excellence. So whether you're an industry veteran or brand new to the world of ERP, we hope that over the next 3 episodes, we'll shed some light on the topic. And as ever, I am joined by my co-host, Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
Absolutely. Hey, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. You probably got more news than I have, so you can tell us what you've been up to. I haven't really done much.
Yeah. No, so I excited to be back and talk about this topic. Came back from Directions EMEA last week in Lyon, which is really nice. A lot of new and neat Microsoft advancements coming to Business Central. So that was really nice to see. I think a lot of customers are going to be really pleased with that. Great time in France. Visited Eiffel Tower, visited the Louvre, and saw Mona Lisa. And this week, actually, a little special week for us and my culture here. We have Diwali today, so happy Diwali to those that are out there. It's a festival of light or color. It's it's a fun time. A lot of sugar throughout this whole week. So it's been a blast from that standpoint. But yeah, lot's been going on. This topic specifically is near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of my career, most of my career, implementing ERP software in manufacturing industries. Different versions of manufacturing, whether it's going to be a light manufacturer that just needs something to get going because you're coming off of QuickBooks, or a 4-site, 4-location between 4 different states manufacturer that does all sorts of things. They control their full supply chain, essentially, type of manufacturing. So everything in between. So it's a very, very a space that I don't think gets much love from the standpoint of software, or from the standpoint of what are the true needs, right? Because you see a bunch of systems out there that has, we have manufacturing, or we have planning, or we do forecasting, right? And they have the right lingo, but do they put it together correctly, right? Is it actually going to work for you? And manufacturers themselves, I think, are somewhat a little bit hesitant because there's so much involved in their business that they're like, wait a minute, we don't know if we could use software that could really manage and help um, everybody do their jobs, because it's mainly all up here, tribal knowledge for everybody day to day. So they're afraid that they can't get that out. Number one, number two, that a software is not going to do it efficiently. So it's not even in their radar. They don't even think about it, right? And um, Illinois, for example, where I'm from, it's there's about 12,000 manufacturers in Illinois. It's probably, I think, the top 4 or 5 states in the country that has the most manufacturing companies in it. It employs about 647,000 employees throughout the state. So there's a ton of opportunity for manufacturing companies to become more efficient, right? But I think what, like you mentioned in the start of this, is they need to first understand. We need to help manufacturers understand why an ERP system is going to work for them, right? And then the next step is saying, okay, what is the right system that's going to work for them, basically. But there's a lot of great benefits when you kind of flip the mindset and say, hey, instead of us using 2, 3 different systems, Excel or QuickBooks, or a separate forecasting tool, or a separate uh, you know, inventory management tool or whatever it is, right? How do we get everything together so we have full visibility of our business in a single system? So I like some of the things that we're going to be discussing today because I think it relates to all manufacturers out there. They need to be thinking about these things if they're not, and if they are, these are concerns for them day to day. It maybe keeps them up at night, or it causes a lot of headaches and arguments throughout the day. So it's to open another door for manufacturers that haven't thought about this. That this is a possibility that going into this door will open up many other doors potentially for their business. So this is a really good introduction episode that we're going to be doing here for manufacturing companies. And it's also important to point out that we're not talking about a specific industry here, which we may in the future. This is, I think, across any industry, manufacturers should kind of think about these things and how they can become a little bit more efficient.
Yep. And I think also there's the way you can see it as a company that is a manufacturer and then companies that have manufacturing within their business. And I think as manufacturing as a department, it's probably the one that feels most distant from an ERP. Obviously, the people in finance will probably feel they're closer and will be in their ERP more hours per week than someone on the shop floor. Maybe sales feels that they'll be next, I'd imagine. Warehouse might feel a little distant, but they'll probably have handhelds and at least interacting through the ERP like that. But there's always this barrier with a manufacturer or the manufacturing department that are busy. They're not going to be computer nerds or whatever. They're probably
Right.
not going to be sat behind the desk. They're
Yeah.
going to be interacting more with the shop floor, with engineers, with production workers. They're not going to be, in front of a screen all the time. So I think there's some barriers that we can probably break down about, surrounding that. And well, how's it going to work for me? The whole balance between shop floor visuals processes versus ERP digital processes.
Oh
And
yeah.
there is harmony there, but there's a lot of legacy barriers that we can probably break down for manufacturers.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it is the front end and the back end, right? Front end, you're talking about the sales team, you're talking about the purchasing team, and all these things are happening dynamically, through day-to-day business with customers, vendors. A lot of that information needs to be related back to the shop floor. It needs to be related back to manufacturing. Hey, vendor's going to be late today. We're not going to get the goods in. Well, can we? What does that do to our production schedule now? Right? Do we need to not work on this production order, insert another production order? Well, how do you get that visibility? Right? You need kind of a system to give you that real time data to essentially start to be more agile in your shop floor. So you're working on the right things at the right time, right? If you start working on things that where materials not available, well, you're gonna stop. You're gonna have to go back, put things away. You're gonna have to come back, restart it. Spend some extra time when inventory comes in. Well, that's wasted time. That's wasted labor at the end of the day, right? Additional cost, right? What about if the vendor, a customer says that, hey, I need something urgently now, right? The date's changed. Maybe they needed something like a month from now, but they said, nope, we need it today, actually. So, okay, well, now we need to work on that, right? We need to make that customer happy, right? If we've committed to that customer. So are we working on the right things at the right time? It's an important piece of this is, manufacturing has to be able to adjust to what decisions are being made, in the front office. So it has to come, it has to be that harmony, like you mentioned, where manufacturing needs to have a say as well, saying, "Hey guys, we can't do this. Tell the customer, right? Or at least let the CSR know, saying, God, this is impossible. We can't meet this delivery time. 2 p.m. is when UPS comes, and you're telling the customer that all of a sudden, yeah, they'll get their product today. Well, it's impossible because already 1 p.m. 2 p.m. UPS comes, look at our production floor. We have all these production orders stacked on this particular route, work center, and maybe that work center is a bottleneck, essentially, right? Well, you need to have that kind of, it's a two-way communication. Where, like you said, manufacturing does kind of sometimes get that, hey, they're in the corner. They'll do whatever we say type of thing, but they are really the livelihood of the business, right? Because they pump out the products to meet customer demand at the end of the day. And if they can't do it on the schedule, you're risking bad product quality issues. You're risking, machines going down. Maybe they don't get the right maintenance because of whatever the production schedule looks like, right? You're possibly missing, not understanding what your labor is there. Do you need to add on a third shift? Do you need to add on a second shift, or whatever that is to meet demand? You need systems that will aggregate all this data for you, so you could then upfront communicate that to the customer correctly.
I have a feeling that there's lots of companies that have manufacturing within their business who get dictated by the sales team of what to run,
Yeah.
what to prioritize. And of course, they're the wrong people to make those decisions. They're not the people that know what necessarily is running on a certain production line at one time. They might not understand yield. You may well seem to have enough raw materials, but you might only get like 90% yield out of it, or 80% yield
Yep.
from it. So the sales people aren't necessarily in the best picture to dictate what they think is priority based on what their customer is telling them. It
Right.
might not be operationally efficient to do that. And there might be a better way round in terms of what materials on hand, how to schedule it, how to prioritize based on resources. As you said, shift work. Maybe you've got a line down that the sales team didn't know. Well, all of this can be
Right.
handled within a single source of data, which is the ERP, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've already touched upon this already, but the idea of real-time data and having that visible throughout the whole business. So what kind of things do we have now? Now we're using an ERP. What do we have in terms of the visibility of our data?
I think, yeah, there's a lot there, right? It's work in process. What's happening, on the production floor right now? What are, a specific production order, how much cost have we put into it? How much labor have we put into it? How much outside process costs have gone into it, right? Um, why are we going over budget on this particular production order? That's a very important element, because you'll get real time visibility of the financial action that's happening to these production orders, without having to just kind of do the old machines are running, inventory is moving. I think we're, I think we're profitable, right?
Yeah.
You need to really pinpoint your inefficiencies in manufacturing, because they're really easy to come about, right? You may be turning a profit on a specific product, and then all of a sudden not realize that the work center that particular product generally runs on, that work center is getting a little old. It's not running as fast. There's a little bit more maintenance involved in it, right? It's eating up, it's destroying some raw material that we keep putting into it, right? That work in process cost will give you that feedback. Um, Inventory requirements, right? Having a good solution that's connected with between sales and inventory and production, manufacturing, gives you better inventory requirements. It tells you what your demand is. It blows out your bill of materials and tells you when you need to order things, when you need to have these things in by, right? You may have a philosophy to be more just in time. So you have inventory where you're not just stacking up, not knowing when you're going to use it, right? At least this way you'll know when you need it, and you get it in at the time you need it, essentially. Labor requirements, right? What is my true capacity? Right? What's my throughput here? How much can I really make based on the 10 people that I have in my plant floor, right? Maybe I can't. I'm always late on most of my orders because I think I could take on 25 orders, but realistically I can only take on 18, right? I can maybe take on 5 orders depending on the volume, whatever that is, right? But you get that feedback based on what what your labor pool looks like, right? What your capacities are for your work centers. You need that real time visibility to make good decisions for the manufacturing floor. Inefficiencies, like I said, for your machines and work centers, right? Why are our machines running a little slower than they did last year, right? What's going on? Why is our cost a little bit higher? Should we be increasing our costs now? Right, our routing times now because the machines are a little slower, so we can't do 10 minutes apart. Now we do 15 minutes apart, so we should update our routings to reflect that, right? And what does that do to our margins at the end of the day? And what does that do? Do we have to do a price increase to our customers? We need to understand all that in real time, so you can make better decisions for the company. Not just today. We look about the following year, the year after, right? You can start making trends analysis on what do you expect is going to be happening, right? Do you need to invest in a new machine because you see the efficiency of a specific machine just going down quickly, right? Is there a new machine that is out there in the market that is doing the same work at like quarter percent of the time now, right? But it costs maybe it's a big capital outlay. Well, okay, so how do you then bring that in? And how do you capitalize it, right? When do you make your money back? What's the return on investment on that machine, right? How much more can you push out now and sell to your customers? So you need to get that type of analysis and be able to properly educate, right, everybody in the company, right? We're about efficiency. We're about making money. We're about helping everybody do their job, right? Even better. And you need real-time data visibility to make that happen.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd like to add in there is the idea of bill of materials, especially if you're coming from manufacturing with no ERP. You might even know what a BOM is.
Yeah.
But when you have a bill of material in your ERP, you can, so just as a quick explainer, bill of materials lists out all of the component parts or raw materials needed to be able to produce a finished good that you then sell. Now, from that bill of materials, you might think that your machine is using, I don't know, certain tonnage per day or certain tonnage per month or using 100 of these component parts. But what about if your assembly line or your production line isn't getting 100 finished parts for every 100 component parts?
Sure.
Well, that's where yield comes in, and you might need to order more to compensate for that. Or maybe over time, you are consuming more raw material than your bill of materials says you should. That
Mm-hmm.
might be an inefficiency of a machine. It might be that you've changed raw material that's now weighs slightly more, is more dense, so you're using more. And especially with this within an ERP system, well, then you can talk to your procurement or your
Mm-hmm.
purchasing and say, guys, we need to overorder. We need to compensate for this. Maybe you've got an old machine that's now consuming more, and
Yeah.
until you can replace it, you might need to update your bill of materials so what you expect to consume is what you're consuming. And this real-time data visibility will start to give you this. Now, whether you do that through the ERP or you might link to an outputted data into Power BI for business intelligence use.
Yeah.
Those kind of options are there for you much more than they would if it's just scraps of paper with work orders on them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. I think at some point, Peter, we should do something on visualized dashboards on the production plant and how much it
Mm-hmm.
increases productivity. It's insane. It's insane. There's been
Mm-hmm.
some studies out there that say just putting a single barometer of some sort that shows, production orders being completed within X number of time, right? Of when they're scheduled to be completed, increase of productivity like is off the roof because people see that like real time,
Mm.
and it's coming from their ERP,
Yep.
and they take ownership of that. Like, no, we want that number to come down, or we want to decrease our costs, or we want to make more, right? Because they could see it, and it's a very interesting concept. And we should
Mm.
do something like that and show some of that stuff. Probably in a future episode to our viewers. I think they would really like that. But yeah, you hit some really good points there on the real-time data visibility.
Okay, that leads us nicely into the next bit then, production planning. Before an ERP, this is probably going to be based in Excel or little slips of paper, as I've said.
Yeah.
But production planning, we've got a few words or some acronyms here that we have said about, but let's just explain these. So, what have we got available in an ERP in terms of planning production?
Yeah, most ERP systems are going to have some sort of planning element to them, right? Especially if there's manufacturing module involved, right? They're going to plan the finished good that you're selling to the customer and plan the production bound, right? And this planning generally is called MRP and MPS. So that's Master Production Scheduler and Materials Requirements Plan. So MPS, Master Production Schedule, plans out the finished good. So let's take a car example. Let's say you're selling cars at the end of the day. And it plans out where you need to make 5 cars because that's what you sold. Okay. And then MRP scheduled out you need, 20 tires. The raw materials around that, right? You need 5 steering wheels. You need you know, all the other raw materials that go into making a car. So think about the parent-child relationship. Plans out the top level, then it plans out the lower level, essentially. So that's most ERP systems are going to have this MRP and MPS planning system, essentially. But it's often, if you're not coming from a true planning system, like you mentioned, Excel, or you're doing things just on pen and paper, right? Your more periodic inventory control system instead of perpetual, right? Where you do more cycle counts and do more things like this. It's the MRP and MPS philosophy takes more into account than just demand and supply. It takes into account what things called like independent demand, right? You have like safety stock, you have minimum order quantities, you have lead times, um, you have all these other elements that kind of are part of this calculation of MRP and MPS that is essentially there to optimize your your planning so you're not ordering, you never run out of inventory basically, right? It's forecasting, it's looking out indefinitely and telling you what you need to order now but taking all your future orders into consideration, right? And whatever time fence that you're planning within, essentially, right? So when you have a system like that, it's very, and you could manage a system like that, right? The chances of you running low or not being able to pivot when things are changing with the demand side of things, right, is very low, right? You're always going to be on top of it because you're planning always ahead. You're more proactive instead of being reactive. Most manufacturers are reactive instead of being proactive, okay? Especially when they're coming off of 2, 3 different systems. So once you connect planning to your demand gains, demand out there in the system, it really, I think, makes the whole process much easier because now you have full visibility of your process of what you need, not only today, what you're gonna need next week, what you're gonna need the week after, what you're gonna need a month later, right? But this does become a little bit difficult for some customers to maintain and manage because MRP and MPS does require some work, right? It's not giving you all the answers; it's giving you suggestions. So another a great advantage of planning is economies of scale part of it, where if you know you can make more on a single run, if you're a batch manufacturer, then you could take advantage of economies of scale, right? With an integrated ERP solution. So all these things, when it comes to planning, a lot of it right now probably happens, like you said, in Excel, someone's had, right? And and if that person's no longer there, right? Excel, as we know, 80% of spreadsheets have a bad formula in it. You're relying on data that might not even be accurate. You're relying on maybe older processes and things like this. So it's important to understand that planning is if you're successful in planning, I feel like in manufacturing you're going to be very successful. If your planning is poor, that's going to easily show in your customer experience. That's going to easily show in your products, right? And other areas of your business. So it's important that you have planning in a place that is fully reliable at the end of the day. Like planning, doing planning right is going to help grow your business. Let's just say that it's going to help grow your business bottom line.
I think when you're moving on to an ERP, it's really, really critical at this stage of gathering as much accurate data as you can to put into your ERP from the outset. So when you're loading on finished goods, when you're loading on raw components, raw material, is look at all the different fields that ERPs give you now. Lead times, where it's purchased from, contingency stock, safety stock. Is it made to stock? Is it made to order? Is it
Right.
one for one? Is it better to do lot for lot instead? So all of these things, feed it as much data as you can, because then you can actually use and utilize the power of automations from planning point of view. So
Yep.
if you're just going to load all of your items on into your ERP with no lead times, you're not going to be able to have a fully utilized MRP system because it's not going to be able to plan anything.
Right.
If
Right.
everything is set up with a lead time of 1 day or whatever the default is, say blank is 0 days, you won't be able to look out a 6 week production plan. So it's really, really worth the effort from the outset to set it
Yeah.
up day one, because then, you're kind of going to have a lot more success and be able to utilize more parts of the ERP than just basic admin processing of a production order.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And you don't want to piss off your vendors, right? That you're always sending them production or purchase orders that they can't meet the delivery line for. You have delivery dates for, and then that just kind of cascades through. All of the orders. Like if you can't provide a good customer experience, it just hurts you as a manufacturer. It really does. So I really feel planning is an important piece. Where if you could get that right and do it right in the ERP system, everything else kind of just falls in place.
Mm-hmm. Next point I've got for you then, I guess there's a couple of areas here. Quality. So let's start with more of the regulatory side of things.
Yeah, when you talk about quality and regulation and stuff, right? Depending on the industry you're in, manufacturing, right? You have some heavy regulations that you have to follow, right? Whether it's some specific local board, whether it's going to be the government or your industry, right? They want to make sure you're following best practice, and that your systems are designed to um, prevent any catastrophic errors, right? Or that there's good contingency plans, things like this, right? So you have these different compliance measures like ISO, right? International Standard Operations, and then you have the FDA potentially if you're a food processor, right? Here in the States, you have the Food and Drug Administration, right? You have all these other kind of entities that audit your business processes and to make sure that there's no major gaps in your business process, right? And an ERP system will help you pass those audits successfully because it shows your process from beginning to end. What are your workflows? How's your data move, right? Is your data auditable at the end of the day, right? Is it reliable at the end of the day? So on and so forth. So it's, sure, can you get away with passing some of those audits on QuickBooks or other solutions? Yeah, I'm sure you can, absolutely. But what looks stronger at the end of the day is when you have an ERP system that you could rely on, any part of the organization, right? Because it all kind of um, tells the story of how bulletproof your business is at the end of the day, right? You need to understand, what your lab quality measures are. Well, here they are. They're in our ERP systems. Here's what we follow. Here's our documentation, right? Here's our different test scenarios that we always go through. Here's our maintenance plan to ensure that we are staying above, what the latest trends are in quality, and all this stuff, right? And you could measure all that and put all that in place in an ERP system. So, um, quality from that regulatory perspective is one part. You also have the other part of just product quality, of when you take inventory and you run it through your quality modules, your quality practices, essentially, whether you're going to do statistical process control or things that are going to affect whether the customer is going to get a good or bad product, right? You could catch it in an ERP system. So you could see and gather that data of what that quality looks like for that particular item or inventory that's being QC'd or inspected, and instead of it moving through and potentially being put into a shipment going to a customer, if it's a bad part, well, you could quarantine it, you could rework it, you could scrap it, you could do other things to it when you have that data available in your ERP system and it's manageable, right? You don't have to rely on spreadsheets or people kind of remembering, oh yeah, you know what, we had a bad piece here, so let me go ahead and let the front office know that we won't be able to ship 10, we're only going to be able to ship 9. Well, it's all connected. The front office is going to be able to see, well, we only completed 9 and we had to scrap one or we're reworking one. So, Mr. Customer, your order is going to be a little late because we caught something in our QA process that we wanted to make sure we fixed before we sent it over to you. So, quality is a lot of different pieces to this, but an ERP system will help you, get a lot more standardized in that respect.
Yeah, it's similar to what we recently shot a podcast episode around, which is the sales returns, especially when these are coming back as a quality issue. You can receipt in to a specific bin. That means that
Yep.
you can't accidentally ship it back out. So when it gets receipted into, a warehouse, or maybe even you're using a third-party warehousing company, but the product is sent back to you instead as the manufacturer for maybe
Mm-hmm.
investigative purposes, you can receipt it into a specific warehouse, into a specific bin or location, whether that be scrap, whether it be quarantine. I mean, you can set up as many bins as you like, but that is a nice, untouchable process that you can't
Mm-hmm.
ruin.
Yeah.
And it's all done through the ERP. So
Yeah.
again, going back to the ISO and being audited, these auditors are looking for proof or evidence of documentation and evidence of a prior occasion that you can show this is what we did.
Yeah.
Now, if you haven't got an ERP or you're only using QuickBooks, it's like, well, I can't show you the complete process, but honestly, Mr. Auditor, I definitely did it right. You can't do that.
Trust me. Just trust
Trust
me.
me. Yeah, trust me. You can't do that. But when it's done through your ERP, well, one, you get the historical data and it's logged in your database. But also, two, it's like we run everything through our ERP. There's no other way of doing it.
Right.
So that inventory there that's booked in, well, it's booked in because that's the only way I can book in inventory. It doesn't
Yep.
just randomly come back to my warehouse and sit in a corner gathering dust. No,
Right.
it actually gets receipted in by the warehouse, who then say it's a return
Mm-hmm.
for quality. So it's all there. So you get all of these extra kind of bonuses, and
Yeah.
it's all through having that centralized piece of software. Next up, which we kind of spoilt the surprise of, but we're going to go for it. Accurate production costs.
Yeah, this definitely I felt like could be a little bit more part of the real time data visibility. But yeah, it's common sense saying, hey, what did this bomb and routing expect to yield in terms of cost, and what's the actual cost on this production order now, right? That's all that work in process type of data, real time data that you get essentially. As you get real time data from work in process, you can better establish your routing setup times and run times over the course of history. Looking at those trends essentially, so it all the accurate production costing is an important piece, because if you don't know and have a good handle on production costs, you're always you won't know your true profit margin until like towards at month end, maybe when you do a manual cost of goods sold analysis, right? Beginning inventory, right? Plus purchases minus ending inventory is our cost of goods sold. But throughout the month, what happens, right? You don't know. And it's all kind of like the blind leading the blind at that point. So, we probably should have hit this a little better on the real time data visibility part. But yeah, production order costs, is another huge advantage of being on an ERP system that could support manufacturing processes, is because you'll get that real time and be able to make better decisions with that feedback.
Mm. And I think with this as well is if maybe you are using machine runtime as a production cost,
Yep.
then if you have your finished good production order process on a particular lead time, so it takes 10 days to run this particular order based on the volume, and you're consistently being able to deliver it to your warehouse in 11 days, you're always 1 day late. What's the reason behind that? Is it not true that it's 10 days and it's genuine 11 days? Or
Right.
have you got some kind of breakdown in the production process that's delaying by a day? Is there an issue with the machine's run cycle? Is it not running as quickly as it should be? Is there an engineering issue that now needs to be looked at? All of this, you get these insights from just generally having an ERP that is tracking this kind of date production order started versus date booked in versus expected date booked in. And all these kind of variations, they come to light and allow you to see where the inefficiencies are.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. It's about being able to have a lens to manufacturing through your system,
Mm-hmm.
and makes you know. To me, it's more common sense. Like, hey, why wouldn't you want this at the end of the day, right? To be as efficient as you possibly can, because cost of materials going up, cost of labor is going up constantly for manufacturing. So why not have a close pulse on what all your costs are doing on the manufacturing floor?
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have standardization of bombs and routings.
Yeah, it's this one is that continuous feedback. Maybe it goes back up to real time data visibility again, but it's that continuous feedback. Like, hey, we made this product and we made it with this bill of material structure, for example, and out of the batch that we made, 50% were defective, right? And we got that feedback from our quality module. And through that analysis, we realized that it's partly because that we need to have one more step in the routing, or we need to issue some sort of polish as part of the bill of materials so it doesn't crack maybe a corner, right? Or something like that. So you get that feedback, and then you could go back, update the BOM, update the routing. So now when you create that same item again, you create it with less defects and create consistency, right? So now you've perfected the formula or the BOM. So you create something that's always going to be good. It's going to pass quality, reduce your returns to the customers, and create a happy customer at the end of the day, right? Instead of somebody walking around in their head saying, "Oh, I know exactly what to do here, guys," right? He's walking around with the clipboard. He's like, "Oh yeah, we need to go ahead and put this extra polish on this one," and someone goes off, runs off, puts polishes on it, and goes ahead and ships it, but then forgets to, okay, well, let's document this somewhere, right? We're
Mm.
having to do this like 5 times a week, and it's causing massive rework costs for us, right? Or we have to scrap a lot. Well, let's standardize our bill of material so we could actually get some better bills and routings in place. So we could make the same type of product over and over again. That's going to be the highest quality that we're going to be able to make at the end of the day. So it helps you with that proper management of what your items require to be made at the end of the day, and not just because in a product life cycle of an item, right? It's going to go through different iterations potentially, right? Yeah, I mean, if it's a different form, function, fit, then we're going to have to do a different item number. But maybe you need to, like we were talking about this whole time, the machine center is getting a little old. We have to update the setup time, or the work center is a little old, so we need to maybe take it from one operation. Now we have a secondary operation now to do something else. Or the raw material that we're getting from a vendor is not the greatest, but that's the only vendor we have to order from. So now we have to add something else now to the bill of material to kind of compensate for that, right? Quality. But whatever the case is, that feedback and the standardization of the bill of material will help you in the run to create better products at the end of the day. And I think that's the real goal here is the more standardized you are, right? It's going to be easier for anyone else to follow, right? Let's say if you had to turn your whole staff over, right, your manufacturing staff over, over time, because again, cost of labor is going up. It's hard to find people nowadays, right? And the better your bombs are standardized, I think kind of goes to the next point that we're going to talk about is easier onboarding of new employees because hey, now you have, you just have to say, hey, here's our manual. Our bombs are accurate, right? And you start here, right? Let's start over here, and they'll be 75%, ready and able to do their job day one instead of 25% where they need to get interviewed by like 15, 25 other people, right? Just to extract some information out of their heads to be able to do their job. So, anytime you can standardize anything in an ERP system, processes, it makes the employee experience a lot easier.
This is really good because you might have, even if you've got shifts, you might find that one shift leader does something completely different to another shift leader, and those kind of inconsistencies are going to play havoc with trying to do any kind of reporting. You might have one particular shift that uses twice the number of washers for some reason, but it's because he's got tribal knowledge that if you only put one washer on, you've got some kind of quality issue, and he knows here, oh no, you need to put two washers in there,
Right.
fixes the problem.
Right.
Well, tell your ERP, update your bomb.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll see this when we look at like a BC demo of this, that you can have multiple bombs.
Mm-hmm.
You can have one active bomb, but you can have multiple approved bombs for a particular item card. So if there is these improvements or you find a quality issue that means the bomb needs to be updated, you just issue a new version. And you've still got the historical ones as well for backward-looking data analysis. But this whole idea of standardization of bombs is fantastic from a data analysis point of view. And it's really assessing where you've got some pitfalls. And as we say, moving on to the last point there, it really helps then with the onboarding of employees. And it doesn't matter in which department. It's going to benefit everywhere. It's going to benefit the shop floor. It's going to benefit finance from a financial control. It's going to benefit the salespeople from maybe they're over promising to customers because they don't quite know how the shop floor is running from a workload point of view. Right. You might be creating your own problems by over promising, giving too short a lead time to your customers,
right,
because you don't know.
Right.
So with all of this, those kind of things that the ERP will now handle, as long as you tell it, as long as it's set up correctly from the get-go, that's really going to help you standardize and therefore have a coherent or say comprehensive onboarding plan that you can put together based around what the ERP is now handling for you from a process point of view.
Yeah.
Any thoughts around out-of-the-box solutions in an ERP versus maybe customizations?
Yeah, I think it's, what is a strategy, right? What are you currently doing? Where do you want to be? Let's establish a vision first. I feel like, that's important. And the vision, before you get any other influences and understand, what system to use or anything like that, I think that's internal. First, I think the entity, the company itself has to understand what their vision is of the business. How much are they going to grow, right? How many machines are they going to buy in the near future, right? Are they going to acquire any other companies, right? How many other additional processes are they going to be doing in the ERP systems? First, establish the vision. But I always tell manufacturing companies, especially the ones that are coming off of QuickBooks or coming off of disparate systems and they don't have a true manufacturing solution right now, is it's always good to find a solution ERP system that offers flexibility, multiple, like almost like a mixed mode manufacturing system that allows you to start small, allows you to start with simple processes, right? Get used to the, different elements of real-time data visibility, production planning, quality, right? All these different elements that are important for manufacturing. Get used to some of that in an ERP system. And then as you grow and understand the software and get comfortable with the decisions and data that's coming out of the system, then I think that same ERP system should offer some advanced, processes. So I think it's kind of like you mentioned, it's the crawl, walk, run model, right? Maybe we get to the walk model, right, first, and then from the walk model, we move into the run model, right? And because now we're really, humming, we're clicking on all cylinders. We understand how to use the system, and we want more, right? At the end of the day, so it's really easy though, right? Especially if you look at systems like Business Central or Accumatica or other solutions in the SMB space where they have a ton to offer, a lot of manufacturing process out of the box. That to say, I want everything, but you have to be careful, and we'll kind of see this in probably a future episodes that we'll talk about, is taking on everything when you're not doing everything right now just to create these disciplines in place could actually slow you down and hurt you. So that's what you don't want, right? And say, okay, we're completing 100 production orders, and now because of the new ERP system, we can only complete 50. Well, that should not have been the goal, right? The goal should have been, if we're completing 100, how do we get to completing 200, right, in a day without slowing our people down? So it's that type of things. Like, we have to understand what the strategy is, and then come up with a good plan and how to implement that in the ERP as part of a phase 1 deployment and looking at a phase 2 deployment. So there is no one size fits all saying, hey, you should always start from here. If you're a manufacturer from any kind, you should start at this point and then you move to point B. It really is, very intimate from the standpoint of exactly what that specific manufacturer needs, how many employees they have, right? How big are their processes? How many SKUs do they operate with? How many levels are their bill of materials and their routings and all these things, and then kind of decide where they should start with and where they should then end up going with.
Very good. Insightful as always. And I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. So,
Yeah.
as we mentioned at the start, this is episode 1 of 3. So, today was all around more of an introduction of ERP and manufacturing, highlighting how it can kind of really revolutionize the way that businesses operate, from real-time data. We had production planning, quality, production costs, bombs, employee onboarding, and everything in between. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an introduction. And coming up in the second part, we will be looking at how this works and what it looks like in Business Central. So I'm looking forward to part 2. Part 3 following that will be the same, but we will be looking at Accumatica. Any final words? I think that pretty much wraps us up, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, great topic today. I think this is going to really resonate with a lot of manufacturing companies. And if there's any questions outside of this, reach out to us. We'd love to help share ideas, bounce, strategies, help you with certain tactics. So this space could get a little overwhelming with a lot of information, and happy to share what we can.
And nothing beats a good demo.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I think we're used to it these days, aren't we? Just like,
Yeah,
the Zoom calls and the Teams calls where it's just like, just throw up your screen. Just show me, just share your screen and show me. So
yep.
I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent.
Cool. Take it easy. And I will catch you on the next one.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Peter.